I don't think I'll ever forget the way she looked at me that night, like she'd finally let something break inside her, and I was the only person who noticed. It started simple. A clogged sink of all things. I was crashing at my dad's place for a few weeks after college let out, just until I sorted out an internship and figured out where I'd land next. He was out of town on some work trip in Chicago. That left just me and her. Maya, my stepmom. She wasn't what people usually imagine when they hear that word. She was real. Late 40s, maybe, but she didn't pretend to be younger. Her hair was always a little messy. She had this calm, commanding presence, like she didn't need attention, but still pulled it from every room. The kind of woman who made you fix your posture without saying a word. And she never asked for help. Ever. So when she stood at the bottom of the stairs and called up to me, voice tight, saying, "I think the sink's flooding. Can you come look?" Something felt off. I followed her down. The kitchen was half lit, only the overhead light above the stove humming quietly. The faucet was still dripping, and water pooled under the cabinet. She stood barefoot on a towel, trying to mop it up with one foot while grabbing a bucket from the lower cupboard. I moved to take it from her. "I've got it," she said quickly, but her hands shook when she passed me the wrench. I crouched under the sink, twisting blindly at the pipe, stealing glances at her shoes, her calves, the edge of her sweater hanging down. Her breathing was uneven. I didn't say anything, but the air between us wasn't just awkward. It felt crowded, like something was about to press against the silence. When I finally got the leak to stop, she sat down on one of the kitchen stools behind me without a word. I wiped my hands and turned to say something, maybe joke about YouTube plumbing tutorials, but she wasn't smiling. Her eyes were glassy, shoulders tense. She looked tired in a way that didn't feel physical. "I didn't expect to be this lonely," she said quietly. "I thought I'd get used to it." I didn't know what she meant. About my dad being gone? Just a woman asking not to be alone in a moment she couldn't hide from anymore. I didn't move at first. I think I blinked. The room felt too still, like if I breathed wrong I'd ruin something fragile. Then, without thinking, I stepped closer, and her hand brushed against mine. Deliberately, lightly, like she wanted to pretend it was accidental, but didn't quite manage to. She didn't pull away. She didn't say it again. She didn't have to. The way she stood there, still unsure, but too tired to pretend anymore, made it impossible to ignore. And something inside me twisted, like I was being pulled toward her and warned away all at once. I nodded, barely, and followed her out of the kitchen. She didn't lead me to the couch or a guest room. Just down the hallway, where the lights were dim and the carpet softened every step. Her room wasn't what I expected. No frilly throw pillows, no perfect designer touches. Just a half-made bed, 2 books on the nightstand, and a folded sweater that looked like it had been sitting there for days. She sat on the edge, one leg crossed under the other, fingers tightening around her wrist like she needed something to hold on to. I hovered in the doorway, not quite inside, not quite out. "You don't have to," she said after a moment, eyes on the floor. I just didn't know who else to ask. It hit me then this wasn't about the leak, or even my dad being away. It was deeper than that. She looked like someone who'd been strong for too long, and suddenly had no one left to be strong for. I stepped in, slowly. She didn't look at me, but she shifted slightly, leaving space beside her on the bed. I sat, carefully. The silence stretched. My heart thudded harder than I wanted it to. I tried not to stare, but my eyes kept catching on her profile. The faint line of tension in her jaw, the way her sweater slipped off one shoulder like she hadn't noticed or hadn't cared. There was a quiet intimacy in the air that made me hyper-aware of everything. Her scent, something soft and barely floral. The way the back of her hand brushed against my thigh when she adjusted herself. The way her voice dropped when she finally spoke again. "He stopped seeing me a long time ago," she said, almost to herself. "I think I just stopped noticing how much it hurt." I swallowed. The words stayed stuck in my throat. I couldn't tell if she meant my dad, or if she was already slipping into something else. Something we weren't supposed to touch. "I see you," I said quietly. Her head turned just a little, Not enough to face me. Just enough that I saw the shimmer in her eyes again. Scared me. How honest I'd just been. How fast I'd said it. She smiled faintly. Not with her mouth, but something softer, like warmth breaking through winter glass. Then she leaned into me, slow and tentative, like she thought I might flinch. I didn't. Her head came to rest against my shoulder, and her fingers, unsure at first, found my wrist and held it lightly, like she wasn't used to being held back. Neither of us spoke. The world felt muffled, too fragile to name. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Will you stay a little longer?" I turned to look at her, and in that moment, I almost said something I'd regret. Almost. I should have left. I knew it. The second her head rested against me and I didn't move. The second I let my hand settle over hers without pretending it was just comfort. But I didn't move, and she didn't either. Her breathing slowed, like she was settling into something she hadn't allowed herself in a long time. There was nothing sexual about it, not yet. But it was still intimate. Too intimate. We both knew that. I kept telling myself I was just being kind. She was lonely, hurting. It didn't have to mean anything. But I noticed things I shouldn't have noticed, like the warmth of her thigh just barely brushing mine, or the way her collar slipped when she shifted, revealing a small freckle near her collarbone, or how she smelled, like faint vanilla and something warmer underneath. I stared at the wall, trying not to breathe too loudly. "I used to be able to go months without crying," she said suddenly, her voice muffled by my shoulder. "I used to be so good at hiding things." She sat up slowly, looked at me for the first time since we'd entered the room. Her eyes were rimmed red, but there was something steady in them now, something a little bolder. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me." I didn't say anything. Couldn't. Her hand was still on my wrist. And then, as if the universe had been waiting for the worst possible moment, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. We both froze. She glanced at it. The screen lit up. Eric, husband, my dad. Her hand slipped away from mine. She reached for the phone but didn't answer, just stared at it until the buzzing stopped. When she looked back at me, something had changed. Not her posture, that stayed straight, but her eyes. They were searching now. For what, I wasn't sure. I started, standing too fast. My leg bumped the bed. "I should give you space." She didn't stop me, but she didn't agree either. I reached the door before her voice caught me again. "Wait." I turned. She stood now, across the room, not crossing it but not backing away either. Her hands were at her sides, clenched, like she was holding back something that had been building for years. "You said you see me," she said softly. "But if you walk away now, I won't believe it." Her words landed like a weight I didn't know how to carry. I stepped back toward the doorway. My hand hovered on the knob. I knew this was the moment to leave, the moment before. But I looked at her again, and she looked back. Not pleading, not seductive, just bare. Like she wasn't hiding behind anything anymore. We stood there, 10 feet apart, the space between us charged and still. Neither of us moved. Not yet. "I'm not trying to confuse you," she said quietly. I still hadn't moved from the doorway. Neither had she. "But you are," I said. "You know that, right?" She looked down, arms folded now. Not in defense, but like she was trying to keep something from spilling out. "Do you think I want this?" she asked, voice low, almost tired. "Do you think I plan to end up in a bedroom with someone who still calls my husband Dad?" The word hung in the air like it didn't belong. She stepped forward, one slow, cautious step. Not enough to close the distance, but enough to make my pulse jump. "I don't know what this is," she said, almost to herself. "I just know. I feel more like myself around you than I have in a long, long time." My throat tightened. "You barely talk to me when he's around," I said. "You barely look at me." She nodded. "Because when I do, I forget to lie." That stopped me cold. She took another step. We were closer now, close enough to see the tension in her jaw, the pulse in her neck. "I felt invisible for years," she whispered. "You," her voice faltered. "You made me feel like I wasn't crazy, like I wasn't forgotten. I never meant for it to feel like this." I said. I didn't come here to. You didn't do anything wrong, she cut in. I did. I let this happen. I didn't stop it when I should have. We stared at each other, the air thick between us. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something else, but the words refused to come. And I should have left again. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, so what now? She exhaled slowly, eyes not leaving mine. Tell me the truth, she said. If I wasn't married to your father, if I was just someone you met, would you still be standing there? I hesitated. That 1 second felt like an eternity. Then finally I answered, raw, unfiltered, no room to hide. Yes. Her lips pressed into a trembling line. I didn't step closer. She didn't close the space either. But that silence between us, it wasn't empty. It was full, dense, alive with everything we weren't allowed to say, everything we'd already said without meaning to. Then her voice broke through the quiet, soft but steady. Do you want me to stop talking to you like this? I didn't answer. Couldn't. We just stood there, two people trapped between the rules of the world and the truth of a moment. She didn't repeat the question. She just looked at me and waited. Before I could answer her question, her phone buzzed again. But this time she didn't look at it. I did. It wasn't my dad. It was me. Or someone pretending to be me. The name on the screen. Liam, stepson. I stared. Confused. Cold spreading through my chest. Why do you have my name saved twice? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Her brows furrowed. What? I walked to the nightstand and held up the phone. You have 2 contacts for me. One with a number I don't recognize. Her eyes flicked to the screen. For a second, just a flicker. Something changed in her expression. Guilt? Shock? Couldn't tell. That's not you, she said. I waited. She didn't elaborate. I moved back a step. Then who is it? She hesitated. Her lips parted like she was about to lie, but stopped. It's your brother, she said finally. Half-brother. I blinked. What are you talking about? She sat down again. This time it looked like her knees gave out. I didn't mean for it to come out like this, she said, voice low. Eric, your dad. He had a son before you. Before me. He never told you. Said it would be easier. Said the kid wanted nothing to do with him. My brain scrambled to catch up. I was 19, she continued. He was in his 40s. I met him at a community college night class. He was charming, lonely, and I was reckless. We had something short, messy, and it ended. I sat down across from her, my stomach tight. So this brother? She nodded. He's older than you. We reconnected a year ago. Quietly. He needed help. I didn't tell your father. We talk sometimes. That's who was calling. I stared at her, stunned. Why didn't you ever say anything? Her eyes glistened again. Because it would have changed the way you saw me. The way he saw me. The way I saw myself. I leaned back, overwhelmed. Suddenly everything felt more complicated. More tangled. And yet, my feelings for her hadn't shifted. If anything, they burned brighter now because I saw more of her. The flawed, hidden corners. The woman with past mistakes. With regrets. With scars that hadn't faded. She looked up at me, afraid. Not of judgment, but of distance. I've never told anyone, she whispered. Not even him. You're the only person who's ever heard that out loud. The air between us was different now. Not cracked, just exposed. No pretending. No excuses. And yet all I could think was, she trusted me with this. I moved to sit beside her again. Slowly, quietly. She looked at me, waiting for me to flinch. But I didn't. Instead, I asked, why me? Her answer was soft and immediate. Because you don't look away. The silence that followed her words was different this time. Not tense. Not loaded with questions or things unsaid. Just honest. Because you don't look away. I sat there taking that in. Not just what she said, but how she said it. Like she'd been carrying that truth for so long it didn't even sound dramatic anymore. Just tired. Bare. Real. And I realized something I'd been avoiding since the first night I saw her cry in the kitchen. This wasn't about some forbidden impulse. It wasn't about sex or curiosity or even the loneliness in the house. It was about two people who saw something in each other they hadn't found anywhere else and couldn't name without breaking the rules. She rubbed her palm against her thigh like she was trying to shake something off. Her voice cracked slightly when she spoke again. I didn't expect this to happen. I wasn't trying to blur lines, Liam. I know what this looks like. I know how close we got to crossing something we can't uncross. I nodded, slowly. But we didn't. Her eyes met mine, searching. No, she said. Not all the way, but in some ways we already did. There was no accusation in her voice. No heat, just quiet acceptance. You made me feel, she continued, like I wasn't invisible, like I still had some kind of worth. That maybe I wasn't just the woman who stayed quiet so everyone else could stay comfortable. She paused, looked down. And you, she added. You deserve someone who isn't half stuck between guilt and memory. I felt that hit harder than I expected, because she was right. And yet, I didn't move. I don't want to forget this, I said finally. Even if we never talk about it again. Even if nothing ever happens. I don't want this to be something we pretend didn't matter. She looked at me with something deeper than affection. It was respect, sadness, warmth, all mixed together. It mattered, she whispered, more than I expected it to. We sat in that stillness again. But this time it wasn't stifling. It was something close to peace. Then she reached out, just once, and took my hand, held it gently. No heat, no hidden meaning, just connection. You should go, she said, while we still have something worth protecting. I nodded, but I didn't let go of her hand right away. Neither did she. When I finally stood, she walked me to the door. No lingering touches, no dramatic goodbyes. But just before I stepped outside, she looked up at me and said simply, if the timing were different, maybe everything else would be too. And I didn't say anything, because for the first time silence was the answer. It's been 10 months. We haven't spoken since that night. No texts, no calls. Not even a glance across the family dinner table last month when I saw her again. Standing beside my father, pouring wine with that same steady grace she always had. Like nothing ever cracked between us. Like we hadn't shared a silence so thick it almost turned into something else. But something had changed. Both of us knew it. And maybe that's why we've kept our distance. Because some things don't need to be undone, just understood. I think about her sometimes. Not with guilt. Not with longing, even. Just clarity. About how close we came to choosing each other. About how we both needed something, deeply, and neither of us had the language for it until that night. She needed to be seen. I needed to feel needed by someone who wasn't trying to change me or teach me a lesson. We gave each other that. And then we walked away before it turned into something neither of us could take back. That was the hardest part. Not crossing the line, but not needing to anymore. I've changed since then. I don't walk into moments blind the way I used to. I pay attention to how people speak when they're hurting, to what they don't say when they ask for help. And her? I don't know for sure, but I think she found her footing too. Last I heard, she'd started writing again. Poetry, mostly. She said it helped her feel less stuck. Funny thing is, I'm glad she didn't leave him. Not because he deserves her, but because she finally stopped disappearing inside the walls of that house. And if staying means she gets to be fully herself again, then maybe it's not really staying. Maybe it's reclaiming. And me? I met someone recently. Not her. Not someone like her either. Just someone kind. Curious. Someone who doesn't flinch when I go quiet for too long. But sometimes, when I'm lying awake next to this new person, breathing in the calm, simple rhythm of a different life, I remember that night. The leak. The dim light in the kitchen. The way she said, "Can you just hold me tonight?" And I don't feel ashamed. Because we didn't break anything.